It stood a story taller than most of the buildings around it, a sign it did well enough to warrant the additional space, or that the owner had the money to make it stand out regardless. The walls inside were lined with endless raw material to stitch clothing of nearly any sort. The thick woolen rug had been dyed the blue of sapphires and the white of fresh cream. A counter of dark wood ran perpendicular to the far wall. Haven't seen you before. The shopkeeper was a man late into his 40s. His rolled up sleeves revealed thick arms with the muscle of a hard worker layered under generous fat. Bald, with a thinning mustache that hung down past his chin, he had a brightness of eye that held my attention. Need something sewn, then? Can make you everything you have in mind, son. Go on, tell, what would you have me make? I was looking for a cloak, Sam. Nothing particularly fancy, just a piece to throw over my robes. Keep out the worst of the frost on the really bad days. Or, if I have to take off traveling, keep the road dust from my other clothes. He nodded, bringing a thumb and forefinger under his lip, stroking the spot. Simple traveler's cloak, and that's all? His mouth pulled into a frown. It's not worth much to me to make those sorts of things, son. My time's worth a good bit of coin, and my labor more so. Gia? I nodded. Then I won't waste any more of your time, Sam. Inside, I swallowed my disappointment, wondering if I should have ventured farther, to the clothier I'd first visited when I came new to Gaul with Laki in tow. The man had tried to gouge me with his prices, but had eventually come round to a fair enough deal. Oi, wait a moment. I didn't say we couldn't do something for you, son. I'm not in the business of turning away customers. He placed a hand to his stomach as if to stay the sort of laughter that came from the belly. I might have something that'll do, sitting around the place. Wait here, G. I gave him a thanks as he vanished through a doorway in the back of the room, reappearing quicker than I had expected. A length of fabric lay folded over both of his arms. It had the color of late evening skies ahead of midnight black. He held it up for me to see. The material wasn't thick enough to be any use in Gaul's climate, especially in winter. A few threads had come undone along the hem, showing that it had seen some wear, but its shape and length were near the perfect fit for me. He seemed to have the same idea, coming over and holding it just before me, sizing me up with a sidelong glance. Looks like the piece was made for you. Are, boy? I inclined my head. That it does, good Sam. What happened? Or why is the piece still sitting here? Did someone decide to raise a cry about its price until you took it back? The truth, son? On occasion, but I found it travels much slower than lies, and sometimes it's nowhere near as fun. I flashed him a smile that he returned. Are, that's true. He gave the cloak a little shake. Made this for my boy. He didn't want something weigh him down, you see. He always wanted out of Gaul. He wanted adventures, like the stories. Tried to teach him some sense, show him my trade, help make something out of him. But he didn't take to it. Always running out, getting into trouble. Boy would get caught in all sorts of mischief and all kinds of things, tearing whatever I'd made for him. Figured he could do with the cloak to keep the worst of it off the finer things, gee. The man pushed it toward me, turning to one side as if wanting to walk away from the conversation. I took it from him, and only then understood what I'd missed at first glance. While its coloring and style weren't fashionable, its quality rested in its making. Light, so much so that it couldn't have weighed more than a breath on skin. A passing gust could have stirred it up if not for something shot through and heavier sewn into the hem, cuffs, and collar. The cloth itself was soft enough to rival pricier materials without promising to be just as flimsy. This is fine work, Sam. Really fine. He waved a hand to dismiss the praise. Something about the cloak left him uncaring for the compliment, but I didn't know what. I had only a guess. What happened to your son, Sam? Why did he leave the cloak behind? It really is good work. The shopkeeper stared at the ground. He left. Long ago. Long ago. The man sniffed. Gaul wasn't good enough for him, I suppose. Said he was off to see the world, the golden road and all it had to give. Boy said he'd find treasure, several of them. He wanted to ride out there past Zebrath, on golden sands, he said. Golden sands, not like here, white, cold, and old stone. He shook his head. But then he left, and he never came back. Don't know if he's still out there, don't know if he's dead. Boy sends no post. None. Not heard a word. Not one. He cleared his throat, and the sound was wet and rattling. though the man had no illness that I could see. All I've got is the cloak he never took. Said he'd be back for it one day. Said it'd be something for me and his mother to remember him by. But it's just a cloak. It's not my son, and he hasn't come back for it. I didn't trust myself to speak after hearing that, pulling free my purse instead. Coins rattled as I fished for what I felt was appropriate. A piece like this warranted a good bit of copper at least. I produced them, then reconsidered, adding more until the sum totaled 4 and 1 bunt, more than enough. It wouldn't soothe the pain of his long gone son, but maybe it would bring him just a bit of warmth, knowing the value of what he'd made for his boy, and that someone else appreciated it. Mati's old words echoed through me, so I passed the coins to the tailor. He stared at them for a while longer than any shopkeeper should have, not moving to take them. After another moment, he reached out with both hands, taking mine as his and folding my fingers over my own money. It's fine, boy. Thank you for letting an old man talk. I pulled my hand free of his hold, pushing the coins back toward him. Someone once told me that anyone who tells you a good story deserves to be paid for it. Thank you for sharing yours. And this. I tilted my head towards the cloak. The man still made no move to take my money, walking slowly back to the counter at the other end of the shop. My son left to travel long ago, but his cloak never followed him. A cloak is made to be worn, traveled under, and keep someone safe. The look he gave me made the meaning clear. I nodded, slipping into the cloak as I walked toward the exit, but I looked over my shoulder as I moved on. He watched me all the while, the ghost of a smile trying to break across his face, but never coming. I stopped near the door, eyeing the stand on which several bolts of cloth stood. There was just enough free room on the wooden surface for me to do what I wanted. I layered the 5 coins there in a neat stack. When I looked back at the man, he was still watching me. We locked eyes. For your son, I said, when he comes back. A gift. I moved to step out of the door. While the man didn't say anything, his eyes spoke for him. In that moment, I promise you, they said, thank you. I left the shop with my cloak, feeling it well worth the price I'd paid.